3, 23, 16. Hup.
Let's go.
Let's go.
All right. Michael, welcome.
Tim, episode 5.
The ICA special.
ICA special. So for
Yes.
anyone that's joining us, welcome to Unfamiliar Randomness, Tim and I's podcast. And this is the 5th episode where we're doing an ICA exclusive.
Exactly.
What is ICA?
ICA, I looked it up because I actually didn't know. It's an intercompany association.
Yes.
So it's a kind of association that joins people from different companies to network, I suppose, and also
Yeah.
have a great time.
Yeah.
And as most of the viewers probably know, we had a small article in the newsletter,
Yes.
which made us also to create this video specifically for the crowd that is unfamiliar with us,
See what you did there?
and to come and have a look what we talk about, what kind of topics we discuss.
For sure. No, we're very grateful for the mention in the newsletter, and we were inspired because a lot of our topics touch on the personal, but also the overflow of the personal experience into our professional lives. We work for a big tech company, the biggest tech company in Europe. So we have a lot of our own frustrations, challenges, and experiences from our career growth, experiences with ICA.
Yeah.
And so it felt natural to make this episode and to continue on this podcasting journey.
Exactly. And I think this episode specifically is about this journey of starting your career, being a young professional.
Yes.
And also about sharing our experience that even though you work for a big company or a small company, probably there might be some different challenges, but overall, everyone is experiencing a kind of journey and challenge, and sharing that, I think, is a bit of the added value that we're trying to have here, connecting that a bit to the ICA group.
I couldn't agree more. And so to kick things off, I want to ask you, who is Tim?
Sheesh. Okay, yeah. Who am I? I am a young mechanical engineer. I started doing my bachelor degree in Delft and my master's in Eindhoven, and then I got to work at, like you said, the biggest tech company in Europe, one of the biggest at least, ASML, which is great. I started off my career doing quite something different than what I studied for, and I was just super happy to start. I worked in such a great environment. My first group that I worked for was filled with super competent people, and I think that's actually crucial to start off. If your environment is filled with people who are highly competent, who can teach you how to present, how to communicate, how to make slides, how to analyze problems, that's so important for your growth. That will really give you an exponential growth in your career at the beginning. And I experienced that, and it was great. And it was not even just that, it was also the people that I worked with. They were a bit around my age as well. So we had a really cool group. And I felt extremely lucky. And the first couple of years, I was like in the best position ever,
Yes.
I can say.
Yes. So how many years have you been at ASML now? What's your current role? Maybe very briefly, what do you do at ASML?
So I am at ASML now for 6.5, almost 7 years, I think. And I've been for 5 years in my first group, which at the end of it, I reached kind of my limit. I had a bit of an unexperienced manager, and I couldn't take the next step in that group. There just was no possibility. So I already kind of announced that I would leave there. I was unhappy. All the competent people I spoke about earlier, they left one by one. So it was time for me to move out. And now I am currently, I could make kind of a diagonal step. So I could move outside of my group into an adjacent competence and move up in the hierarchy as well, which is a bit unusual. But I got a bit lucky and I put myself in the right position as well. So I am now again in a very interesting group. It's a bit different because it's a quite young group. So I am more of a senior there now. So I'm trying to give back what I experienced when I just started.
Yes, and you're an architect, right?
I'm an architect, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So it's kind of like a technical lead position for people who don't know what it is. So you are kind of a competence owner, like a knowledge hub of a certain function or competence, and then
in this case, wafer backside, right?
Exactly.
Or wafer flatness.
yeah,
like
wafer backside. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a bit about me, and small part of my journey.
Yeah.
What about you, Michael? So how did you came to where you are right now? Where did it all start?
Yes. So I'm not Dutch, unlike Tim, although Tim's actually German, but I'm not from this part of the world. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm South African. I'm from Cape Town, although actually all over South Africa, but spent the majority of my time in Cape Town. Studied in Cape Town at the beautiful Stellenbosch University. If there's anyone here watching that's from Stellenbosch University, they'll know what I mean by saying it's beautiful. I studied mechatronic engineering. I finished up at the end of 2019, and then in 2020 I came over to Eindhoven. I was contacted by an agency called Zelven, that hired me to work for a company called Trumpf, German company based out of Ditzingen near Stuttgart. They make the high-powered CO2 drive laser for the EUV system. So I worked for 1 year within the ASML clean room, hands-on. I worked shifts. I then took a step out of that role after 1 year, and I moved to a mechanical design engineering company in Best, so just outside of Eindhoven, called Brabants Engineering, as the Dutch people would say. I just saw the thing spike as I did that. And they rented me out to ASML. So I was rented out to the team that I'm actually currently in. I was with them for 1 year, and then I moved directly to ASML, firstly as a design engineer. After a year, I moved into a lead engineer position. And last year, I moved into a product owner role within my team. And yeah, currently still working within the team. Product owner is one of these agile roles. So we work in the agile framework, the scaled agile framework. So we have scrum masters and architects, as you mentioned. And I've been working now in total for 5 years. It's my 5th year in the Netherlands. I worked a little bit, like 9 months in South Africa before coming here. So just over 5 years, maybe round it off to 6 years I've been working now.
So product owner, that's a kind of project lead, right?
Kind of like a project lead for a specific discipline. So I work a lot with project deliverables, but I need to have quite a bit of the background knowledge in order to make estimates for timelines, for efforts, for these sorts of things. And yeah, it definitely is something that I enjoy because I get to interact with a lot of project-related people. I find I resonate well with project people. You were talking about learning from really competent people. I get to learn a lot from the project leads that I work with. So the project leads will have many product owners that deliver to them. So there's a product owner of each team. So the project lead will, interface with many teams: mechanical team, software team, electrical team, functional team, yeah, I'm product owner of the immersion systems at ASML, for anyone who's at ASML who knows what that means. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, it sounds like you made quite a lot of steps. It sounds like a very straightforward line. How did it feel during your journey? Do you feel like there was always very clear where you wanted to go at that moment, or?
Yes, it felt very clear where I wanted to go, but the journey wasn't as... I don't want to use the word easy. Wasn't as...
I was going to say easy. Yeah,
no,
straightforward, or
straightforward, or as enjoyable, actually, is the right word, as what it may have seemed. So coming from South Africa, South Africa's a third world country. There's a lot of competition in South Africa. So if you get into university, you hustle really hard. There's a huge amount of competition. So people work extremely hard. They push themselves very hard in order to make it. South Africa has a huge wealth disparity. So if you make good steps in your career, you earn lots of money, you can live a good life. So I definitely came to Netherlands. I didn't realize it at the time, of course, but with this mindset, and also with a bit of a personal void within me that I needed to prove that I was worthy, prove that I was good enough. And obviously, I was trying to prove that to myself, but I pushed myself extremely hard. So the first company I worked for, Trumpf, I worked really hard there and I did really well. And I have no doubt that I would have been able to grow within Trumpf, but I was impatient and there was a lot of growing pains at the time because they were expanding very fast. So I just jumped ship. I took a huge pay cut when I did that because I left shifts. So I was getting a shift allowance and I moved out of shifts. So I took a huge pay cut, which was a big risk, especially 1 year into my career of coming overseas. But that obviously paid off in the long run. I joined this pharma company.
What made you What made you make that decision to?
My mom. I had a long conversation. I was actually in Germany on training for Trumpf when I got the offer, and I had a long call with my mom, and she was telling me to follow my heart, and if it felt right. And at the time, I was still getting enough money at the new company to live, and so.
But why do you think what was your heart telling you, like, oh, go with company A or B, or was it like the kind of work that
So I was I was a SAT engineer, so a site acceptance testing engineer. So don't get me wrong. I mean, I got to work on the most advanced laser in the world in one of the most cool clean rooms in the world. Did a lot of testing, calibration, troubleshooting, these sorts of things. But I was working in the factory, and I wanted to use more of my degree. So I wanted to work more on the design side. I wanted to work more with maths and simulation. Ironically, I didn't do that much of that type of work because I ended up becoming a product owner. But I wanted to be stretched further, I'd say, intellectually.
Yeah.
And that's what drove me to look for more of a design role and join ultimately D&E within ASML.
And in the end, you turn out quite well, I would say. Like you
indeed.
are now we are in the same company. And interestingly, we both met at the cluster talent program. So intern, like a how would you call it, like an internal program?
Yes, within the mechanical development department at ASML. Essentially, the managers nominate people that they believe have strong leadership qualities for the future in order to train their soft skills. So I think there were 18 of us selected from the whole of MDev within the certain criteria.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And we met because you offered to give me a lift, because Tim's such a nice guy, He lived near me, and he offered to give me a lift to our first training. And this was 3 years ago, and that's how we became friends.
Yeah, and we started our podcast actually in the car, but we didn't record it back then.
Exactly.
That's the way it started. We just started talking about so many things.
Yeah.
And I think now the thing that we actually would like to, I think, discuss today is about how you live your life in a work environment, but also like how that connects to the outside of work situation, right? So like how important should work then be? And well, as we mentioned, we were both in a talent program, in the same talent program, and one might imagine that opens so many great opportunities, and that your way is paved for you in gold, let's say. But as we both found out, that's not completely true.
No.
You can still get stuck. And you can still maybe the opportunities that you get are not the ones that you were actually looking for, the ones that you actually needed.
Yes.
And finding that balance between what is being offered to you and what you have to sacrifice in return to get it, and whether or not that's worth it for you. I think that's maybe the main point of discussion for today. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And if I look at myself, I definitely had high expectations going into the talent program, that when we were done, there would be all these doors that would just automatically open, and everyone had this master plan. But that's not the case. You're still very much in control of your own destiny. I will say that the talent program, and I mentioned this in one of the videos that you made for your channel 2 years back when I was still in my old apartment, that talent program was a catalyst for my growth journey, for sure. So although you get trained professionally on how to be more emotionally aware and all these sorts of things, it's impossible to learn that professionally and not take that into your personal life. So it was the beginning of really my journey. There were some other very key moments in my life that made me really interested in psychology and these sorts of things. But my perspective on life, the personal life, and then especially the professional life, my feelings towards my work and my professional life have changed hugely in the past 3.5, 4 years.
In which way?
I found more peace. I realized that I was definitely chasing or running away from something.
That original drive you talk about when you came from South Africa.
That feeling of not being enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite common for people who come from poorer countries, from third world countries, because of the
competitiveness
and the make it or break it mindset that's etched into you, and Eindhoven or Netherlands in general being such a magnet for expats. I think we see it from a lot of our colleagues, I see it from a lot of colleagues. So I mean, I remember at the beginning, like, having my manager tell me to work less hard. I'm like, what the fuck is this?
Exactly,
like, how on earth? It took me a while to adapt to that, to actually take holiday. I think the first 2 years I barely took holiday. It was COVID as well. But firstly, settle into the culture a little bit more. But then also my perspective towards work. And I think a good example, if you look at ourselves, right now we have plenty of work on our work laptops waiting for us.
Yep.
We could have worked late this evening, as with every evening that we've recorded. We could have poured a lot more into our work, but knowing when you're getting what we call diminishing returns, so the amount of effort that you're putting in is no longer scaling. There's always a sweet spot, and then you risk burning yourself out. You risk getting frustrated because you're putting in more than you're getting out. So knowing where your own sweet spot is, being able to regulate yourself, that's also part of emotional awareness and self-regulation.
For sure. Yeah.
And also realizing that, work, it's going to be different for all people, but work can be a beautiful complementary part of one's life, and it doesn't have to always be the main focus.
100%. So also the things that I started asking myself, I think it was probably a bit before the talent program, to be honest, but it's basically like, what is work? Like, what does it mean for you? How does it serve your life? How does it serve your purpose? What is my own life's purpose? Like, these kind of questions are foundational for how you actually act in the end. And we talked about this briefly before this recording. I think that at least something that I see frequently in my environment is that people came from this educational school environment where as long as you read the books, do the assignments, take the courses, finish the courses, get to the next level, to the next class, if you make it, you will end up with this great result, which is your job that you then, you achieved. You're now an engineer. Now you work at the prestigious company, whatever. You made it. But then what? Right? So that's the question. And my realization at that point is actually like all that it gave you, which is not nothing, but it gave you a lot of additional opportunities, which also means a lot of decisions. And people come into the work life pretty like a blank slate, having no idea that, now it's all up to you. Like, you need to pave your own path. You have to decide where do you want to go.
And if you don't, the world is going to pave it to make it suit it.
Exactly. And the thing there is also like the thing that you mentioned before, right? You were working so hard and someone had to tell you to stop working hard. And this is like extremely confusing for someone who just starts, if you come from a third world country or not, because you are actually motivated to work hard and someone tells you, no, we don't want your additional value. There can be two reasons for that. One is that they're afraid that you might burn out. And the other can be that they simply cannot offer you any step up as well. And that is something that has also happened for me. And that's what, like, the ceilings that you sometimes reach in a specific group.
And there's two things I want to reply to that. So one of the things is, okay, if you truly do love your work, you can do it for the beauty of it, for the sake of working, and maybe you're not expecting more pay or whatever, which is rare. The whole concept of overworking oneself, I had a crazy realization, especially in the past year and a half, as I've moved into more of the lead engineer role and now into the product owner role. Things that are extremely important within your career growth are confidence and maturity. And overworking oneself actually shows a lack of confidence and immaturity, because what it shows is that you're not able to set your own boundaries. And it also shows that you're thinking about the game wrong. You're thinking in a small picture mindset. So you're thinking about the problems as these small localized things. If I can just get all these drawings done, then I can send off. But there's always going to be more drawings. There's always going to be another project.
Yep.
And so what the company and what your team and what the society as a whole actually needs from you is to grow up, get the confidence and the maturity to say, all right, these are the boundaries. This is how we're going to work. And this is what's going to allow us to perform sustainably and long term. It's like a mental switch that one needs to make.
100%. I'm referring to my own videos quite a bit, but I made a video about that as well. Like, one of the main functions of you existing or your consciousness is to decide on what thing you find most important to prioritize and then act on that thing as well. So you need to do both. You need to be able to prioritize and you need to act. So say yes to one thing, say no to the other.
Yes.
And if you're unable to do that, then you're basically lost.
Yes.
And like you said, there are you have a list of things that you need to do, taking it back to like all your years before you went to have an actual professional job, again, education, you had a to-do list that you had to finish.
Yes.
You and I know now, our to-do list will never be empty.
Yes.
Never, never, ever again.
Yes.
So it doesn't you cannot finish it. So therefore, you don't have to force yourself. You just need to choose which are the most impactful things that I can do right now.
And I love that. And I want to add something to that, which we also spoke about before recording. Something that should be on the top of everyone's to-do list, but we often forget, is not
subscribing to Unfamiliar Patterns.
Hey, but it's not always the things that you need to do, the content, the knowledge, the drawing, the email. But the most important thing that should be at the top of everyone's to-do list is, how do you make people feel when you finish a conversation with them? If you can make people feel good when you're done interacting with them, that is the number one thing, without a doubt, that is going to drive your happiness, your fulfillment, your success in your career, your interactions with people, and overall just make life more enjoyable. And particularly within I want to say technically competence heavy companies. I think you see this in heavy software companies or heavy hardware companies where you have a lot of technical people. The default mode is to fall into knowledge, into doing things. We spoke about doing and being in one of our episodes. But that's not always about the microns and the lines of code and this, but it's that 2 minutes after the meeting, when the people online have dropped off and you're with a manager and a project lead, and you have a quick conversation, or you mention something about your holiday and people feel good, or you compliment someone about something nice. Those are the moments that carry so much more weight than all the cool shit that you knew in the meeting.
And it has to be genuine as well, right?
Of course.
So I really like that because, and I think we're both coming from the technical engineering point of view, where indeed most people, like there's a degree to which you are fully competent in your field. So how much knowledge, content you actually have. And then a lot of people are very competent and have a lot of knowledge, but their social skills are lacking, basically.
Not only that is a huge one, and I was a victim of that myself, but I wouldn't say my social skills were lacking, but there was more being overpowered by my insecurities and my defense mechanisms, because we're all human and we all have previous traumas and experiences in our lives, and it's so easy to get lost when we're triggered. So we're in a meeting and someone calls us out for whatever stupid shit, and we get into this perspective shift where we narrow in and our emotions are taking the better of us. And it's always much better to be able to take a step back, to breathe, to be free of those emotions. I think it was Joe Dispenza who said that feelings are the way of the body thinking, or something like that. I can't remember the exact one. But be free of that, and then be able to rise above it. I'll give a perfect example. I sent an email yesterday to a colleague, and I wanted them to look into something, and they sent a really shitty reply back and CC'd in my group lead and a bunch of other people.
Do you want to mention that colleague by name?
No, I don't, but the colleague won't watch this anyway. Maybe, I don't know. But sent a pretty shitty email back, which triggered me. You know, I was like, the fuck, bro? You know, so immediately I could have been a keyboard warrior, replied back, or started, or you can just rise above it. You can feel that feeling, you can take a breath, and you can truly just be the bigger person. Just let it go, right? And by doing that, you allow yourself to be elevated. You allow yourself to live in that realm where you can then chat to another colleague and make them feel good. You don't get caught up in it, you know. And that, I think, is the most difficult thing. At least it was for me, and I think for so many people. Especially when you're very focused, you're very driven, you have all these projects, and you're interlaced with the feelings. You spoke about how we dance with each other's shadows. But we can also fight with each other's shadows, or we can get drawn in by each other's shadows.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that it's actually, it is in a way like your social skills and how maybe you have the skills, but you actually have to be conscious about acting it out. And what I also find very interesting is that everything you just said is something that is also 100% applicable and useful in your personal interaction with people.
Yes.
There's no real difference between being at the office or talking to your wife or to your friends. Like giving them a more pleasurable experience is also going to make your life more enjoyable. And one thing that actually for quite a long time significantly changed the way I viewed life in general is just that if you go to work, sometimes you feel like, okay, I'm going to work, I have to work, but I started to focus more and more on the social interactions I have with people. So if you have a meeting, it's not a meeting talking about content. No, I'm just like sitting in a room with a bunch of human beings, and now we're going to talk, and you focus on that interaction a bit more. It's so much fun to think about that. And that, I mean, it's a little bit like you focus more on the process rather than the outcome for the moment.
Yes.
Which is a very interesting coaching strategy that I love. And whenever you feel like you might be stuck and not getting the outcome that you desire, a good tip is to try and focus on making sure the process is right. Is it something sustainable? Is it something that, according to the knowledge that you have, should get you where you want to be, even though you don't see it right now? Like trusting in the process. That's a big one as well.
That's a huge one. So we were also talking before this podcast about the paths that people are on in their career, and we recognize that if you're watching this episode, especially if you're this far in, you're probably someone who is very driven, very motivated, very good at their job, works for a successful company here in the Netherlands, and your trajectory is exponential, right? Let's call it your success or your career path. And what we discussed, which I think is very relevant, is that the decisions and the path that you choose dictates the extent of that exponential curve. I think we all did enough maths here to know what I mean by that gradient of that exponential curve. And fulfilling these topics in one's personal life is like building a strong foundation of a house.
Mm-hmm.
If you can solve things at a base level, then as things grow and the complexities increase, it automatically solves itself.
Yep.
And we see it. I mean, we work for a very fancy company like ASML. When you have a problem, you can start putting containment after containment after containment after containment, or you can be like, okay, fuck it, let's take a step back. Let's get people involved. Yes, it requires a lot of man efforts and planning and whatever. But if you can then solve it at a fundamental level, you then create a beautiful platform to build on in the future.
Yep.
And that's exactly what it is with the personal and the professional. As people, we do tend to have these compartments. We compartmentalize things. We play an act. Robert Greene talks about this a lot. We act as a colleague or as a partner or a father or whatever it may be, which is natural. But if we're able to solve things in our personal life, it'll automatically spill over into our professional life.
And I think it was interesting. Now you used the metaphor of the platform, but I remember you had a more beautiful, elegant metaphor before about the garden. Do you want to introduce that?
Yes. And this was actually something that we discussed last weekend when we were sitting out in the garden. We were barbecuing. So Tim and I were both on holiday for a while, and we came back and we were going to record last week. But one of the things I thought about is how this podcast came from Tim and I's friendship. And so it's important for us to invest and put time into our friendship. A beautiful example of solving things at a personal level before taking a professional. And so we had a lovely barbecue last weekend, and we were sitting in this garden and we were discussing various topics. And one of the things that I'd thought about in the past but came back to me and resonated so much with me, in particular on this topic, is the idea of creating a garden, creating space in a garden for beautiful things to grow. So if we think of a garden like the one behind me, maybe towards the end I'll tilt my phone so you can see the garden behind me.
Bragging about his own garden.
It's not mine. I
Incredible.
rent the house. But I had to cut away a lot of the bushes and had to make space for things to grow. So a garden or a mind that's cluttered, that has too much in it, that has lots of weeds, and has things overgrown, it doesn't let sunlight in, it doesn't create the conditions or doesn't have the environment for beautiful things to grow. So if I put this in context and make it very real for my own life, I recognize that I was running away or chasing, I think more chasing, so it's something in my life. And my garden wasn't set up to allow beautiful things to grow. And so by cutting things away, essentially what you do is you create this environment that when the sunshine comes, which it will in summer, and the birds drop the seeds, then you have the space for this thing to grow. But you're not waiting, your fulfillment and your peace is not dictated on this thing growing within this time.
No.
You're content, you're peaceful, you're happy that you have this garden and you're grateful for it. And then one day out of the blue, something beautiful blooms from that. And that's fulfillment. That is that journey. That is that patience. That's that exponential curve. And the people I think who really win in life are the people who are on that path. Yes, we know people that are successful and earn lots of money that are on the other path. And it can be so tempting to look at them and want to chase that. be in that unhealthy mindset, but tell yourself the story. This is what I've got to go through to be successful. I've got to push myself. Or you see other people working, and there's a lot to do with the American culture and all these sorts of things. But we're here to say, well, you can have your cake and you can eat it too. You can be at peace. You can be a person that develops personally and then professionally one day have these beautiful things grow from that garden that you've created.
Yeah, you create the environment and then the things happen by themselves. It's a bit like you focus on the process and instead of on the outcome, and the outcome will come naturally. Very beautifully said. The thing that I like to think about and highlight is then like, you have certain amount of control about this garden. So what do you want in this garden? How do you want to shape this garden? Where should the flowers be? Where should the grass be? These kind of things.
Yes.
And that ties nicely with the idea that I spoke about earlier. So what is work? How does it serve you? What do you actually want from life?
Yes.
These foundational questions, I think, are absolutely fundamental and crucial in order for you to have a fulfilled life, in order not to get burned out, in order to know what you want, in order to say no to the right things, in order to pick out the weeds that you want to pick out. Because how do you know what is a weed if you don't know the difference between weed and flower?
Yes.
So, and I really love the quote from Viktor Frankl, I think, concentration camp survivor, who says something like, if you have a why, you can overcome almost any how.
Yes.
And if you invert that, it's also true in the sense that people who don't have a clear why don't know what to do, don't know how to address any kind of challenge. They get overworked, they get burned out. It's the lack of a proper why.
Yes.
So like the vision that you have in your mind about how your garden should look like, that is, I think, not only for your professional life, but for your life in general, I think you should focus on first and foremost. And then the rest, like you said. Like,
but this is something that we all know. Just like we all know that we should exercise and we should eat healthy and we should tell the truth and we should not steal. We know these things intrinsically. We know that we should understand our why better. We should understand our principles and these sorts of things. But a lot of us don't, myself included, right? There's a lot of
it's not so explicit, I guess.
It's not so explicit. We're not taught these sorts of things. But I think you made a really nice document recently, right?
True, yeah. So I talk about these kind of topics as well on my personal development YouTube channel, which I started a bit before we started our podcast.
Familiar patterns, the opposites of
familiar
this
patterns, exactly.
Yeah,
the opposite of unfamiliar randomness. And I am going to drop, or I have already dropped, depending on how we drop this video, a PDF guide, which is basically a summary of knowledge that I gained from different books.
The Tree of Life.
It's called the Tree of Life.
I love it.
And it's basically using the tree as a metaphor for how you have your basic principles, how that leads into your personal mission, how that mission feeds into your roles. Roles decide which decisions you make, and then the actions that follow from that. So it's like a really organic document that helps you to ask the right questions and reflect on reflect on these kind of questions.
Yes.
And we can drop the link in the description as well if you're interested in that. I can highly recommend it, and I will also link the books that I gained this knowledge from. You can read the full book if you like.
Yes.
I just made a little bit more condensed version for that purpose.
Yes. No, I think that's a really brilliant guide that you made. I found it extremely insightful. It's something that I want to work more on, and I found myself also thinking about how I could use the principles in your guide in my journaling and understanding myself and really what we want, because I really like that quote. And I think you also posted it on your Familiar Patterns Instagram with that thing that was moving where you say that if you don't have that why, anything can get you. And I think that that's so true. And we spoke at the beginning of this episode about how if you don't have a clear path in life and you don't have these clear principles, someone out there is going to take advantage of that you don't have it, and they're going to make you work like a slave for them, and they're going to make lots of money because of it. And that's not necessarily wrong. I mean, like some people, need to be entrepreneurs, and some people need to be employees, but that doesn't mean that you need to be a slave, like mentally.
No, exactly. Like
You
you can be chosen by your own desire to work for a company and
Yes.
and help.
And still have a why
Yeah,
and know your
yeah,
principles.
100%.
And I mean, we see it a lot at a company like ASML, where you have lots of people who are 50 years old, who have been in the same position for 10 years. They love it. And they get a
happy.
good
Yeah.
salary. They're bloody brilliant at what they do. They're the backbone of a lot of the competences and competence leads and
Yep.
all these sorts of things. What do they call them? TCs, technical competences or something.
Yep.
And
Technical competence, yeah.
Yeah.
And these are people who are basically the ones that have such a routinized way of doing things that they are able to teach the
Yes.
youngsters how to do things, to
Yes.
teach them the ropes.
they're a huge part of the reason why we have all these chips that we can record and do all this stuff on and
Yeah.
stuff.
And in the meantime, these people maybe didn't have a super impressive career, but they go skiing with their family every year. They have 3 kids. They are volunteering here, there, whatever. Like, you can have a fulfilled life. For instance, also as a good example, I have a friend of mine who's probably also going to watch this video.
Yes.
Hi, Friso. So who is like,
Oh yes, the man.
yeah, like
the man.
he sailed to the North Pole and then climbed some random mountain there. Like, he's going on adventures all the time.
Yeah.
And that's like his thing. And for him, a job is basically, well, it shouldn't suck too much, but it's basically just a way to get money in order to go on the next trip.
Yes.
And that's 100% fine. Like, if that is the thing that gets you going, if that's the desire that you feel from your soul, then that is your career path, let's say. That's the thing you should do.
And I think what's very important to mention at this point is that when you're doing things because you're chasing something or you're running away from something, there's this void that you're trying to fill. And it can seem, at least this is my experience, it can seem nonsensical when you have hippie people that say, oh, be at peace, bro, you don't need to be the best, whatever. But then you have these Olympians that, oh, you got to wake up at 5 every morning to be the best, and only the best are the ones that are. And I think what's really important to mention here is that peace, that feeling of fulfillment and peace and gratitude, true gratitude, that you can experience when you let go of maybe traumas or things that have been holding you back or have been putting you in certain mind states through understanding oneself, through breath work, through meditation, through being calm and these sorts of things. That feeling is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's worth more than the biggest bonus you can imagine in a paycheck. Because if you have that void, then that bonus is going to go to a fancy car or a bigger house. That's not going to solve any of your problems, no matter how much we're tried to convince otherwise by the society and the media that we live in. You truly need to live in alignment with your principles and with the core values that you believe in.
And you experienced that, right? Like, you came from, I don't want to say the void, but like you said, like, you were running away from something, and now I saw it in your eyes. You experienced this kind of calmness as well.
For
right?
sure. And for me, it came through making some big changes in my personal life this year, which have obviously then filtered into and overflowed into my professional life. And I feel so much more content, and I feel the interactions with the people that I'm having are leaving both me and the other people feeling happier, more fulfilled. They're more genuine, and in general, things are just going in a great direction. And no, I didn't get a massive bump in my pay grade at the beginning of this year, but I got a really nice position. I'm learning from really amazing people, which I think we also discussed at the beginning of this episode is so important.
Yep.
Choosing learning over extra pay, especially early in one's career, is by far the best thing that you can do.
Yep.
And I'm fortunate enough to be in that position.
Maybe that's one more thing that we could mention, also to wrap it up,
Yes.
the episode. We have talked a little bit about the fact that you should learn, like, you should take experience and learning over the pay grade bump, although there's also a limit to that, and it's also a thing that managers can use in order to get more out of you without having to give you anything in return. So it's also a bit of a trap. And I think the flip side there is that, and that's something that I realized I could make the step now. I might need to make it again at some point, that it might just be the environment that does not allow you, like, you've outgrown your environment. So if your manager cannot offer you the next step, but you're actually really good, they're going to tell you anything they can in order to make you feel like you're not ready for the next step and that you have to stay there. And I really love this metaphor of the water bottle. Like if you're going to sell a water bottle next to a well, you can't sell it. If you sell it in a desert, you can sell it for $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, in the end, like a bit like what do you have to offer, but also where are you offering it?
Yes.
So you have to offer it in places where it's actually being valued. And if you're not being valued where you're at, maybe you need to change.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going back to the garden metaphor, where you got to put things in the right place in your garden and maybe move some plants out of your garden because they're alien plants, or they're taking too much water from the other plants, or they're growing too fast and they're not letting certain things grow, right?
Yeah.
You've got to be in control of that.
Or maybe you are in the desert.
Maybe.
And maybe you shouldn't try to make a garden in the desert because that's pretty hard.
Yes.
They did it in Vegas, but yeah, it costs a lot of money.
They did it in Egypt as well. And they had an amazing civilization. That's another whole thing that we can go into. Yeah. I was in Egypt recently, for anyone who doesn't know. But on that note, I think we should give a quick summary of this amazing discussion that we've had this evening.
Yep.
Tim, you opened up the discussion talking a little bit about ICA, the Intercompany Association, giving a brief background about yourself, what you've done, your current role as an architect within ASML, your career of about 7 years, you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we started talking about our personal and professional journeys and how we met through the talent program at ASML. I mentioned how I'm currently a product owner coming from South Africa. And then we got into some really interesting discussions. Maybe you want to summarize?
We went into the work-life balance discussion about how you should view basically your life as well. What is really important? What does work really mean to you? How can you find the answers to these kind of questions?
Mm-hmm.
We went back and forth with very interesting metaphors and discussions, viewpoints. And I think we wrapped it up finally with how did we wrap it up, Mike?
Talking about the garden. Linking things in our personal and professional life. On that note, I want to reach out to anyone who's still sticking around watching. Say, please engage with us. If you've got questions, if you've got comments, if you've got experiences that you want to share with us, then reach out. We'll be at an ICA event. Tell us what you've gone through, any things that you've learned, any things that you're struggling with, because trust us, we're just two guys trying to figure out this journey, and we're probably going through many of the same things.
Hopefully we can learn a bit from whoever is watching. Like Mike said, reach out to us in person, but also leave any questions in the comments, and also tune in for the next episodes. We would love to develop this a bit more and get better at it.
Indeed. Great stuff. Thanks a lot for watching.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.